Hello, everybody. After previewing every single conference in the country except the Ivy League, it's finally time for the creme de la creme, the peak of the mountaintop, brother. It's the Big 12. Mike and Eric will join me in studio to break down the best conference in all of the land, including all the players you need to know and how we think this loaded league will shake out. Recording live from somewhere. This is One and Done.
Get out the insurance cards, get out the copays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drroto.com.
It's time once again for everybody to come aboard at the Green Screens Media train. Welcome to One and Done. Bienvenidos a One y Done, your fast break of college basketball información. We are powered by the universe's greatest website, drroto.com. I'm your sometimes humble host, the conductor of the aforementioned Green Screens Media train, and I go by the name of Jay Heinrich. Find me on X at Dr. William Cannon. Follow me, and I will smash that follow back button because I'm a follow back girl. For sure. 3 deep in the studio tonight. Look at them. 2 of the best in the business doing it today on screen with me right now on your viewing devices, starting with the man. Let me get that full salute in there. Right there. El Capitan himself, the captain of the Green Screens Media ship. Follow him on X at MC Holland 34. That's the OG Money Mike, Mr. Mike Holland. Mike, what it do?
So I usually come on here and I say, "Oh, I'm excited to do this. It's the off season, the portal." But I am super excited because we are 6 days. Well, I mean, basically 5 days away. DFS is starting soon. This is the last conference preview. Go check out all the stuff we've done. Let's just get to it, man, because I'm too excited right now. I've been jamming down all kinds of exhibition stats and stuff into our spreadsheet here. So yeah, let's get to rocking and rolling, man.
Mike's been chomping at the bit in the group chat for that DFS slate to finally drop. Let's get us some totals over there in the DFS world. Just want to get some college basketball that means something also. And you know what means something? The guy that's last in the intros, but he's first in your hearts, in tus corazones, the Baron of Bread of Green Screens Media, you can find in those Twitter streets at Fantasy Nav. He's Eric the Blue. Mr. Eric Romoff, what's up, man?
Man, we out here counting down the days, the seconds, minutes, hours. They go to the almighty dollar. And that dollar, if you like to see that dollar magically turning into more dollars, you better make sure you got that notification bell on because we're going to be grinding on these DFS streets.
Oh, yeah.
And the early part of the season is always the most profitable. It takes a good 2, 3, 4 weeks for DraftKings and the various providers out there to catch up with how they should actually be pricing these players. So we are counting down the days until payday, aka the tip-off of the 2024 college basketball season.
No doubt about it. So make sure that you hit those notification bells like Eric said, and also do your part in the Green Screens Media universe and hit like and subscribe as well. Hop in that live chat. We know you want to talk Big 12. Even our guy Peanut Butter Posse coming in. Had to bring Kentucky into it, didn't he? Had to bring Kentucky into it. Somehow. I've heard of Kentucky too. But this is Big 12 night, and we know that Peanut Butter Posse will keep the live chat lively indeed, no matter what. So hop in there with them. If you're not watching live, if you're watching later, hop in the comments. Let us know who your team is. Did we talk enough about your team tonight? Did we pay enough attention to your squad? Did we, maybe give the short end of the stick to your coach?
Low tier.
Yeah, maybe we put you in the old low tier, as we like to do to some of these teams in the last segment of
Public
our
apology
show.
to Southern Miss. They look pretty good in the preseason.
It's preseason.
Your boy Andre Curbelo, man. He looks good.
Well, again, let's get to meaningful basketball, boys, and then we'll see what happens. Peanut Butter Posse's at a dance party with Beyonce. Interesting, because I am at a dance party with my broskies in basketball right here on One and Done. And we're dancing and moving and grooving to the tunes of the Big 12 tonight. So make sure you hit all those buttons. You follow our guy at The Real Napier as well. The guy Chris who pops in, you see his pretty face on here from time to time. And then also at One and Done CBB is the show page on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok. Just follow them all so you don't miss anything that we're doing. Like the Big 12. Last year, 14 teams. But guess what? That number's gone up by 2. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But all those questions that some of us had about Houston coming into the Big 12 and dealing with that grind on a night in and night out basis were quickly answered as they won the league easily by 2 games over Iowa State in year 1. Oh, hum ho, just come on over to the toughest conference in all the land and just take over and do your thing. That's coaching, and there's a lot going on there, but we'll get to that later. However, a little bit of a revenge in the conference tournament. Iowa State absolutely annihilated Houston in the final there, 69-41. A real nice total there. Let's talk about NCAA tournament teams last year. 8 bids for the Big 12. Houston, Iowa State, Baylor, Kansas, all top 4 seeds. And then you got Texas Tech and BYU, both a 6. Texas a 7, and TCU a 9. Texas Tech, BYU, and TCU unable to escape the first round. Texas out in the round of 32, along with Baylor and Kansas. And then you have, of course, Houston and Iowa State, the showdown in the Sweet 16 before bowing out to – they made it to the Sweet 16 before respectively bowing out to Duke and Illinois. So rough tourney, all in all, for the toughest conference, according to Ken Palm, number 1 conference in the country, with 12 of the 14 teams in the top 100, including 9 in the top 50. So all that being said, Eric, we like to do the headlines here after I give a quick recap of last season, and coaching changes are usually the first thing that we bring up. But in a conference that, like I said, went from 14 to 16, it's not that they just added 2 teams. Like, there was some exits, some big time exits, and the way, depending on how you look at it, some big time entrance to the conference as well. So, Eric, hit us with the headlines that we need to know about the Big 12.
Yeah, going to change up the order a little bit here because, as you mentioned, conference realignment is a revolving door that never stops turning, and one that saw a lot of people entering and exiting the Big 12 in particular. The beloved Texas Longhorns of some on the show, along with Oklahoma, they both head out over to the SEC, and we have 4 new teams, all from the Pac-12 coming in. Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah have joined the Big 12. So went down by 2, up by 4 more. The net of it go from 14 to 16 as conference realignment keeps churning. Coaching changes were not absent in this league as well. Friend of the program, Mark Pope, the former BYU head coach, talked to him a few off seasons ago about the transition into the Big 12. He's actually packed up, headed over to a little program called Kentucky. BYU goes into the NBA ranks for his backfill. They bring in Suns assistant Kevin Young. Oklahoma State bid adieu to Mike Boyton. They bring in Coach Steve Lutz from Western Kentucky. And in West Virginia, they technically had an interim coach with Coach Eilert in place of Bob Huggins last year after that fiasco of an offseason. But they have made it official, not with Coach Eilert, but instead of with another friend of the program, Coach Darren DeVries from Drake is heading over to West Virginia to head up the Mountaineers program this year. Kind of like we talked about, at least alluded to in the intro, we've talked about in a variety of different statistical measures, maybe the strongest league in not only the conference, but maybe one of the strongest leagues ever. All 16 of these teams are inside of the top 90 of Ken Palm's preseason metrics. So this leads to a question. I got a little proposition for the 2 of you boys. Considering the strength of this league, top to bottom, all 90 of them in the Ken Palm, all of them in the Ken Palm top 90, need to know, if I'm setting a line right now at 9.5 teams from the Big 12 that make it into the dance, are you going over? Are you going under?
I'm taking the under here. I just it's a lot of teams, and with the way that some of these super conferences are sort of loading up. Unfortunately, I feel like the Big 12 is going to get the short end of the stick here when it comes to tournament time, regardless of how strong. I think they're going to be very strong at the top. I think we're going to have some discussions later about the bottom, bottom tier, the bottom third of this league, and sort of what that brings to the table on a night in and night out basis. So again, I think that while they still will be the toughest conference, I'm taking the under on that one, Mike. You going over or under 9.5?
Man, that's that's a tough question. I see it right there at 9. I do see one extra bid going to the Big 12. 10 is, man, that's a lot of bids. I mean, that's nine at-large bids. You're talking about a super conference SEC. You're talking a super conference Big 10. We don't know what the Mountain West is going to do. We're projecting them to go from like 6 to 3 or 4, so a couple of spots there. I can't say for sure because we think the A10, AAC, that we think they're going to get a couple in. Just not a ton of spots, right? Like the Pac-12 got 4 teams in, so disperse that between the Big 10, the SEC, and the Big 12, and it's really only one spot. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'll go with the under as well, man. That's a ton of teams, and we talked about the Big 10 and it would be how close the Big 10 is.
How many are the Big 10 going to get in? How many are there that can go around? I say that facetiously because I've been joking about the Big 10 being overrated for such a long time now. But then last year, obviously, we didn't get as many in. But with this new super conference setup, the way that it's already working out, I'm kind of. I thought Mike was going to go over there. I honestly did.
It's just tough, man. So there's 31 automatic qualifiers and there's 37 at-large bids now with the dissolve of the Pac-12. So there is technically one more at-large available because we only got 31 conferences instead of 32. But there's one less AQ, so that helps. But man, 10 is crazy. I mean,
it's a big number.
It's going to depend on other conferences. It's going to depend on Mountain West, honestly. We'll see what the Mountain West does this year.
Yeah, good stuff. And that's the sort of stuff that's going to drive conversation all season long. And we'll find out real quick what some of these teams are made of for sure. Let us know in the comments if you think the Big 12 will get over 9.5 teams or under 9.5 teams into the old the big tournament where they do a little bit of the Bailamos, but the rhythm take you over, Bailamos. It's dancing. Anyway,
Te quiero.
I was hoping you'd do the whispering part too. Thought about it.
No, I'll sing a whisper song, but it goes, "Hey, how you doing?" That's a different whisper song. But anyways, let's get off of the over under 9.5 and get on to some player spotlights, but not after the One and Done universe hits those like and subscribe buttons. The Green Screens Media universe, the One and Done, whatever you want to call it. If you're watching here, you're a breadhead right here with us in the Green Screens Media universe, and we appreciate you for doing that. So make sure you hit all those buttons. Getting choked up here talking about the Big 12.
I like Peanut Butter Posse coming and saying eliminate conference tournaments, but I love the conference tournaments because it gives teams, an opportunity to get in. We were just chatting you're talking about football now. We're talking about how it's kind of silly that, there's not more teams in the conference tournament for football. So same with football, ditch championship games, D24. Nah, man, I just want it to stay where it's at, man. I know it's probably going to expand, but then it kind of gets a little messy once you start getting to 100 teams. Like what are we doing at that point? Like the regular season's diluted. It's just you're gonna put 80% of the super conferences in. If you do 96 teams, it doesn't make any sense because their KenPom metrics and their quad 1 victories are going to be so strong compared to everybody else. I don't like it, but it's just me.
I get it. You can still create some of that drama by having some play-in games or some of those mid-majors, even to get into that 96. It could still work. It could work, and I think once we get to the across the board, that power super conference level, I should say super conference sort of status across the board.
NC State, yeah.
Then we might be a lot more likely to see something like that, where it's just like, hey, we're going to get a percentage of each of our conferences in, and then you guys just take the rest of them and figure out how you're going to do it, whether it's play and stuff or not. We will see though. We will see, though, how that works. And Mr. Brooks in the chat thinks Mark Pope will be fired by 2026, immediately coming in and stoking those peanut butter posse fires. Make it one big tourney. Why not in-season tourney? Are we talking like the NBA now? Where
I think he's suggesting the tournament starts in the first game of the season, and we just play this thing out.
We just play it like that. Yeah, no doubt about it. If they didn't win the tournament, would have missed their run. Well,
it took O'Connell hitting a 3-pointer to tie the game against Virginia, and then going on the run to win that ACC tournament.
It all lined up. We would have missed it, but that March pause for so we don't get madness. That happens down there is always fun. There's always some madness to find for sure. Good stuff. Keep the live chat rolling as we get to the player spotlights now. Let's first start with some returning players to this fine conference, and no better place to start than H-Town, right, with Houston and Coach Sampson, the returning, defending champions of this conference, at least regular season wise. We're going to talk LJ Cryer, and Juwan Roberts, of course. Cryer averaged 15.5 points on 39% from deep. Roberts, 9.5 points, 7 boards, a steal and a half per game. Now, Mike, Jamal Shead played such a big role for them. He is gone. But these two are up with the best in the country at their respective positions.
Yeah, and usually we throw out the stats, and it's like, the guys that we profile, the stats just really jump off the page, right? With Houston, we know it's a defensive team. We're going to be a top 2 defense in the country. So, and they're so slow on offense, going to be 350th in tempo. They're just going to they're going to shut you down on defense and get quality looks. And it starts with these 2 guys. The thing is when you're limiting possessions, like Eric always says, if you're super efficient and you play tough defense and you limit possessions and you're super efficient offensively, that's what these guys are. I mean, Cryer shoots nearly 40%, and then Juwan Roberts is just a beast around the basket. So, Cryer had some questions last year coming in from Baylor. Just didn't know how he would really fit, but he turns out he fit pretty well. I mean, his defense was there. He's just a nightmare on both ends of the floor. He's entering year 5. There are a ton of year 5 players in this conference. It's absolutely crazy. You're going to hear say year 5 probably 15 times for the end of the show. So, without Shead, I think we're going to see Cryer with additional playmaking responsibilities. Not a primary facilitator, but I think you're going to see him, his assist rate go up a little bit. And then Roberts, just a beast on both ends, just an animal down low. All 4 years in this program, he knows what it takes to win. And he's been to a Final Four, an Elite 8, and 2 Sweet 16s. So the culture that obviously Coach Sampson has built, it's pretty awesome. And Cryer and Roberts will be 2 of the best players in the league for sure.
Yeah, Sampson can coach for sure. Cryer, what do you think? 5 assists per? Is that what we're sort of looking at?
Yeah, I think they have these on there, so who's kind of a primary facilitator, but I can see Cryer getting to 3.5, 4 assist range for sure.
Okay, closer to 4. That makes a lot of sense for sure. Another thing that makes sense is a duo from Iowa State ready to dominate. Keyshawn Gilbert and Tommen Lipsey, of course, 13 points per for both of these, 4.5 boards last season for both. Gilbert averaged 4 assists. Lipsey averaged 5 dimes, 2 steals per game for both of these guards, and both shot over the high line of 35% from beyond the arc. It does not get much better than this. Of course, a couple of all-league players and one of the best returning backcourts in the country, Eric, for their ability to beat you up on both ends.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like we talk a lot about how styles make fights, and TJ Otzelberger has a distinctive style for this program. And a lot of that has to do with these 2 returning players, right? Arguably one of the best returning backcourts in all of the country because of their ability on both ends of the floor, right? Tommen Lipsey graded out as the 3rd best defender in all of the land. And coming up there right next to him, we've got Gilbert rated as 6th, according to Evan Maya's DPPR. So definitely a lot to like about these 2 players, starting with Lipsey, right? He can give you plenty on the defensive side, but on the offensive end, he is a playmaker. He's got outside shooting that you need to have if you want to be competitive in today's league, right? Like really complete end-to-end type of player in terms of the collegiate level. goes into his junior year with full command of this offense. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's not a whole lot of room for improvement, but if it's out there, I wouldn't be surprised if Lipsy finds it in this junior campaign. And for Gilbert, he came over from UNLV last year and just fit right in, just completely seamless in his admission into this program. 6'4", his size, he's able to get to his spots, get better shots if needed. This will be his 4th year in college, with 2nd year here in the program. You'd like to see him step up his game against the best of the best, right? Iowa State, was kind of a dark horse favorite as we got into longer shots in tournament time, but they didn't really seem to answer the call when the lights were brightest, and some of that shined through in Gilbert's game, right? So like to see him really step up in those biggest moments, and I think he's got the type of skill set to do it. But like I mentioned, Coach Otzelberger has to be absolutely thrilled to have these two players back.
Yeah, when you've got the defensive end sewn up, and you just need to fine tune your shot selection and not rushing things sometimes on the offensive end. Those are all coachable things. You can coach that stuff out of players, or just at least coach them to improve them. And if there's a little bit of improvement for some of that for Gilbert and Lipsy, man, we are going to see nobody wants to play this team anyway, especially this backcourt, but we're going to see a deep run for the Cyclones. Another team poised to make a deep run is Kansas, because of course,
why not?
It's Kansas.
It's Kansas.
Also, when you have the best big man in the country, arguably now with Edey gone, you got Hunter Dickinson. That does not hurt, but Juwan Harris in that backcourt as well. Dickinson is an absolute walking double any night. You just Hunter Dickinson has a basketball jersey on, 17 and 10. Lock it in. It's happening. Oh, and the block and a half per game as well. The 3-point percentage at 35% for me, Mike, was one of the more impressive parts about last season. And Harris, it doesn't shoot it too bad from deep either, all while being the main facilitator in this Jayhawk offense. So when you talk about things that are important in the age of the transfer portal, Mike, not only is it some cohesiveness on your team, but some experience on your team, players that have been there before and had the brightest of lights on them. And Dickinson and Harris bring that to the table for Coach Self as both enter, again, drink up, year 5.
Yeah, year 5, man. And it's right there between Dickinson and Janai Broom for, best big man in college basketball, at least, from my perspective. Dickinson 7'1". Just the fact that he's able to just knock down the three consistently it's kind of crazy. I know sometimes defensively he gets bagged on because he's not, as lateral, but he'll block some shots if he's packed in the paint there. 2nd year in Bill Self's system, and that's a system that has really been good to big men that, we really talked about that, obviously putting up an impressive year. DeJuan Harris just feels like he's been around for forever. I kind of bagged on him because over the last couple of years, because he's not really a great shooter, but I mean, honestly, the percentages 2 of the last 3 years have been over 35%. He just doesn't shoot a lot of them, and teams will let him take the shot. So kind of a streakier type of player. I think he kind of took a small step back defensively. I mean, I would have said he's the best defensive player in the country last offseason. But you kind of look at his numbers and a little bit of regression there, but still his regression was still at an elite level. So don't mistake that for sure. But his leadership is going to be key for this team, and his decision making. I mean, he's going to have the ball in his hands a ton. So getting these two guys back, obviously, a huge part of what Kansas wants to do. And then, they got some help around them. So we're going to talk about those guys a little bit later.
Is a Harris, obviously the elite level defense is still there, but is a Kansas championship run, is Harris being that elite of elite, the top 1% of the top 1%? If he's that player again, is that what it's going to take for Kansas to do the whole thing this year? Or
I think that raises the floor. I think the floor raises with that. I don't know that. I think the ceiling's kind of tied to these guys that we're going to talk about from the portal.
Okay.
For sure.
All right, we'll get to that then later on in the show. How about some duos there returning to the Big 12? Always good stuff there. You know what else is good? We're not just talking about those three teams. No, a 4-box from around the league. We're not going to just give it to you for those duos. We got 4 more players that we want to highlight, including somebody that I wish I knew how to tweet. It's my guy, Caleb Love.
Jersey giveaway from last year.
Yeah, we gave away a Caleb Love jersey. My son watched a couple of college basketball games last season and immediately decided that Caleb Love was his guy. And it was, okay, I can't get away from him. And, of course, he's right here. Kind of weird to say Arizona in the Big 12, especially since Caleb Love was the Pac-12 Player of the Year last year, where he averaged 18 points, 5 boards, and 3.5 assists. But not to be outdone, another one that feels weird to say, Cincinnati Bearcat Dan Skillings, 13 points and 6.5 boards. Darius Johnson, the UCF guard, 15 points, 3.5 assists, 2 steals, and 39% from 3. And then Darian Williams, the Red Raider up in Lubbock. Some impressive numbers. There's not much else you can say about that. 46% from 3, does a little bit of everything. 7.5 boards, 2 assists per game. I'm going to talk about Caleb Love, though. You knew if I was talking about somebody in this box, it was going to be Caleb Love. Talk about veteran. Talk about a guy that's been there and had the bright lights on him. He's done it, been there, done that. He's that guy for Arizona. Year 5 for Love, who put up big numbers in Tommy Lloyd's up-tempo offense, which when you put up the highest offensive rating of your career, that equals numbers. And we'll see if he can replicate those sorts of stats, because the knock has always been,
here it is,
from day one, consistency and decision-making. And there are certain things you can't ask a leopard to change his spots. And I think we have a pretty good idea of who Caleb Love is at this point. If he can just rein it in a little, I mean, just a tad. Arizona, if I happen to pick them for the 3rd year in a row in my bracket, has a much better chance of making it all the way. Eric, coming to you next here. Give me a couple more players out of this fine 4-box that you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, I'll start with Dan Skillings, right? A player that we projected a breakout for him last year, and we got it. Like you mentioned, 13 points, 6.5 rebounds per game out of a guard, 6'6" guard, right? So he's a tough cover. He's still improving in his game overall. I want to see his outside shot improve a bit if we really want to consider him in among the ranks of the complete players list. But I mean, he can affect the game on both ends of the floor. Just an absolute huge hold here for the Bearcats. And I want to jump over to those Texas Tech Red Raiders. Darian Williams, like you mentioned, just completely stuffing the stat sheet. Absolute monster after a spectacular freshman year at Nevada. Not a guy who commands the ball, but he makes all the right plays. He's got a great sense for the moment and making the right decision in those tough spots. And like Skillings, can play multiple positions coming in at 6'6". A lot of versatility there. Last year specifically, he slashed 49, 46, and 88. I'd expect him to be featured heavily in his upcoming junior season, and that bodes well for the Red Raiders. Mike, one name here to hit, that's Darius Johnson. What do we need to know about the UCF product?
Yeah, so a lot of people were wondering how UCF would fare in their transition to the Big 12 last year, and it was pretty good. I mean, 7 league games, thanks to Johnson and company. Another 2-way impact guard. So many guys that play both ends of the floor. That's why you see a ton of Big 12 teams in the top 20 defensive efficiency-wise. And he really improved his outside shot last year and showed that he can get to the free throw line. So he's becoming that complete player. Going into his final year in the program, he's the unquestioned leader for UCF. And if they want to do some damage in this tough Big 12, he's going to be a big part of it.
No doubt about it. And shocking to nobody, these are all guards on your screen there, and we love to talk guards here on One and Done. Caleb Love, Dan Skillings, Darian Williams, and Darius Johnson, 4 players returning on their respective teams in this fine conference. Excellent stuff there from the gents. You know, I wasn't going to let either one of you talk about Caleb Love. That was always going to be me forever, and it was just going to happen that way. And it's just, we move on. You know, we just it's a fact of life. You know what else is a fact of life is liking and subscribing and notification bells for One and Done and Green Screens Media. That should be a fact of life anyway. If it's not for you, make it that way. Do your part in the Green Screens Media universe. Hit like and subscribe. Follow us at One and Done CBB on all the socials. Make sure that you follow Mike and Eric as well. Get over to drroto.com. Check out all the work that your broskies are doing over there too. Mike dropping Monday Night Football, DFS stuff. I'm giving you your stock watch for NFL on Thursdays. Eric, you writing for Doc right now, or are you sort of just lying in the weeds? What are you doing?
I'm writing a weekly injury update as you're trying to collect all of the latest injury news on Saturday before the games kick off. You can check drroto.com and you'll find my latest sleuthing on how they stand, how they'll fare, whether they'll be available, all the stuff you need to know right before lineup lock.
Good stuff there. So you got your Saturday article there. You got your Monday article, Mike. You got your Thursday article with me. We got you covered all week over at drroto.com. So make sure you follow over there, and make sure you keep hanging out with us here on One and Done for all your college basketball info, including some portal movement in the life and times of player mobility, as my good friend Eric Romoff likes to refer to the transfer portal as. We were talking about players that were returning on their respective teams. Now we're switching over to Portal Combat. All right, won't do the whole thing again like I did last show, but Portal Combat nonetheless. Let's start with a duo up I-35 from us here in Central Texas. We're going to Waco to talk Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier. There's nothing else to do in Waco, honestly. So if you live in that town, you should be at that basketball arena watching this team play. Roach coming in from Duke, where he averaged 14 points. Omier averaged 17 and 10. These are 2 great gets, Mike. But surprisingly, we didn't, on the whole, I guess, we didn't really hear the conversation about Baylor's transfer class as much as some other classes, other teams, other schools, even locally. But when you look at these guys, when you look at Roach and Omier, these are 2 of the top handful of players in the whole country, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And guess what? Year 5 for both. And man, Roach is a guy that's had a ton of success. He's been to a Final Four, an Elite 8. Had his best offensive year last year. He finally kind of put it all together. Now he comes to a Scott Drew system that's tailor-made for guards. Expect him to have another big year to finish out his career. And then Omier, just a winner. I know last year was pretty tough, but a lot of injuries on that Miami squad. Made a Final Four with them a few seasons ago. Was a big-time player in the mid-major ranks early in his career, and just super versatile, able to knock down the 3 ball, shooting 35%. You've seen his game expand kind of like Hunter Dickinson. Looks like this year we're finally going to see it. We're finally going to see him slide down to the 4 spot. If the exhibition's any indication, and some of the talk about, maybe taking a little bit of a load off of him, having to play that 5 spot that he's played for pretty much his entire career. I mean, he's 6'7", but obviously he's strong and can show that he can handle it. But his natural position is probably the 4, and I think we're going to get to see that. And I think that's going to make for a huge, huge year for him, and also this Baylor Bear team.
Dude playing out of his natural position and averages 17 and 10. Oh,
yeah.
No biggie.
Yeah.
Easy peasy.
Yeah, seriously.
Whatever. No biggie. Huge deal for the guys up in Waco there. The old Baylor Bears, Jeremy Roach and Norchad Omier. Yeah.
No, talking about Scott Drew not going to Kentucky.
Hey, listen, you can say what you want about Scott Drew, and I promise you. I promise you I have. But one thing that you can say is that he can't coach and he can't get players onto that campus.
Yeah.
So we'll see how it goes. Roach and O'Meara are definitely a couple of cornerstones of that program going into this season now. And we talked earlier, a little foreshadowing about some more Kansas players incoming to the program. AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin, Eric, are a couple of guys coming in. Storr, formerly of the Wisconsin Badgers, and Griffin, of course, from Alabama. Both of these guys are impact players and are really, Eric, we talked about the big names, but here's the reason now. You got Bill Self fired up again. He basically admitted to giving up in February, knowing that team was not going to make a run. Now he's energized with guys like AJ Storr and Griffin coming in. And these two players definitely give Jayhawk fans something to look forward to this season.
Yeah, absolutely right. Bill Self took a hard look in the mirror at that roster and realized that there were some gaps with what he was trotting out there, and he went out and he tailor-made, he handpicked players that fill in those gaps perfectly. I mean, this portal haul for the Jayhawks is up there with the best in the country, and a lot of it has to do with these two, right? AJ Storr, 6'6", just an absolute bucket. Family friend of the program, Mama Storr, has been known to grace the One and Done live chat. So if you're out there watching, super excited to see your boy here for the Jayhawks. Showed last year in Wisconsin that he can be the lead dog in a productive offense. I wonder how he'll really fit as more of a second or third option on a team that has equipped with guys that can score. Right, he's a huge piece. Whether Kansas will be an elite force this year will be kind of the decision making and shot selection for Storr in this Self offense. But I mean, ultimately went out and got a guy that fit a glaring hole in this offense. And Rylan Griffin, on the other hand, like, he's a guy that you don't have to run plays for. He can get his shot wherever he wants it. He's an elite floor spacer, not the best defender, right? But he's shown that he can back down as a small ball four at Bama. He's what they thought they were getting in Timberlake last year. So, definitely nice to see a guy that we've got tape of him doing that at the collegiate level now make his way into the door, and just, overall a pretty underrated pickup nationally. So, Kansas heads into this upcoming season with a lot of wind in their sails.
Agree, no doubt about it. Hard to argue with the very heavy winds blowing that sail of AJ Storr and Rylan Griffin. They'll move. That's a little bit of movement there for sure. Jayhawk fans excited as they should be. I mean, it's Kansas anyway, right? But a couple of more reasons there to really have the skis out in front of it. Who knows? That's a tough team. That's tough.
Yeah,
that's a tough roster right there for sure. Good stuff there. A couple of duos again, portal wise. We did a 4-box earlier. Excuse me. We did a 4-box earlier. We're not getting through a conference preview show without a 5-pack. It wasn't happening. And if you've watched any of our conference previews, this graphic probably looks familiar to you with the old 5 spots there. And we're hitting a 5-pack from around the league. This time of transfers. Trey Townsend, Coleman Hawkins, Trezarian White, JT Toppin, and Tucker DeVries. A couple of guys here coming in that averaged over 20 points per game last year in White and DeVries. Just playmakers up and down this list. I'm going to start with Trey Townsend. Certainly looked the part in their exhibition the other night. I know I'm saying, hey, that's this exhibition. I said it earlier. I hinted at it. But baller's going to ball. You can see it. Trey Townsend looked the part. He might be coming from Oakland, but he's already shown what he can do against top-flight talent. He had a big game last year against Xavier early in the season, and then another one in that upset, cover your ears, peanut butter posse, against Kentucky. Townsend gives Arizona's offense a different dimension at the 4 with that versatility offensively, especially the 3-ball, 37% from deep last year. Eric, what about Coleman Hawkins now hanging out in little the Little Apple, Manhattan,
With a lot of
up
money.
there for Kansas State with a fatter wallet for sure. What do you think about the former Illini player now suiting up for Kansas State?
Yeah, kind of an interesting offseason for K-State, a program that we had grown accustomed to them getting very busy very quickly in the portal. And this year they kind of got off to a slow start, but made up for it with quality as they landed one of the biggest fishes in the entire transfer portal pool. Like you mentioned, he comes along with a $2 million NIL price tag. So definitely will hope to get what they are paying for. He's going to slot into his more natural 4 position with the Wildcats and just going to be a legitimate nightmare for opponents, right? Like you won't find many forwards across the country with his ability. Honestly, on both ends of the court, I think he's going to be a centerpiece for what Coach Tang wants to do with this K-State program. Mike, Jazarian White coming over to the Horned Frogs, another coveted name here in the portal season. What are they getting in the guard now?
Yeah, so we could have gone with a couple of other options on this TCU class. We'll talk about them in the tier section, but White feels like kind of the guy that unlocks their upside. Their key guards like to attack the basket. And he's more of a 3-level scorer, so I don't think we're going to have a problem seeing his transition from the CAA be a problem for him. He looks really good against top flight competition last year when you look at his metrics, and just think he's going to be a key piece to their upside. I see old Peanut Butter jumping in here, also involved in an upset of Calipari's Kentucky. Yeah, so I mean, look, these mid-major guys can play. One thing that I look at as far as a transition from these guys is more so how they play. I know they only get limited opportunities most of the time, where if you're a Power 5 player, you typically get anywhere from 12 to 20 games against top flight competition, at least what Ken Palm considers like a tier A or tier A plus B opponent. These guys in the mid-major ranks, they only get maybe 3, sometimes 4 or 5, depending on how good their league is. And he's a guy that showed that he's able to do it against that competition. We've mentioned that all over our previous shows, how they've done against top flight competition, because you can go out and put 25 a game, against C-level competition, and your stats are going to look really nice. But you want to pay attention, obviously, to how they're playing against, some of the best teams in the country. So Tredarian White, definitely a big-time get for TCU. Eric, what about JT Toppin, man? We thought Texas was going to land him, and he ends up at Texas Tech, man. What do you think about that?
Yeah, not only a blow for your beloved Longhorns, but also a big-time blow for the Lobos, right? Toppin was one of the best freshmen in the country last year for them. Now comes into Texas Tech. He's 6'9" with the springs, right? Major bounce to his game, was a force on both ends in what was a really good Mountain West conference last year. I mean, the dude finished with 130 offensive rating, less than 10% turnover rate, right? Just one of the best shot blockers in the land, and just a massive get for the Red Raiders, specifically when you think about their ability to get things done on both ends of the court, right? Like a guy that can be versatile, that can contribute well on both sides is exactly what you're looking for. JP Toppin was a huge land for the Red Raiders.
Yeah, he absolutely was, man. And, Grant McCaslin there is doing a great job. And then the last guy we have here is Tucker DeVries. So, of course, he was going to end up going wherever Dad was going to go. And so he's at West Virginia, had an outstanding career, 2-time Missouri Valley Player of the Year. He's, 6'7", can handle the rock, gets to the line. He can flat out shoot it. With West Virginia looking to obviously start over, DeVries going to have a solid transition block. Coach, Dad, is going to have a solid transition block with his son coming over to stabilize the program in year one as he kind of gets his thing going. And I expect to see Tucker in the NBA after this season. He's that good.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise any of us at all. Trey Townsend, Coleman Hawkins, Tredarian White, JT Toppin, and Tucker DeVries. This conference is so loaded. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard to pick 5 from the other teams.
Exactly. Yeah, and we'll hit on some other players later on in our tiers. Of course, that some players that maybe if we didn't shout out your team or your incoming transfer just yet, we'll get to them. we'll get to. And if we don't, let us know in the live chat for sure. Hop in the live chat with Peanut Butter Posse and our guy, Mr. Brooks, over there hanging out. G. Brooks, doing his thing, their thing, they, them, who knows? I don't, whatever you want, it's fine. But make sure you hop in the live chat, hit like and subscribe. Let's leave the transfers in the dust and let's talk freshmen. It's hard to find just a ton of freshmen that you can forecast to know that they're going to contribute to their teams immediately, especially right now with how these, fifth and sixth year, the last COVID year, college is still a little bit older than it will be in the coming years because of the extra COVID year. But still, let's talk about some freshmen, some featured frosh here. Featured four-box frosh. How do you want to say it? Four-box of featured frosh. There we go. We got it. Another four-box around the league. Jaden Quaintance, the Arizona State five-star center. BJ Edgecombe, what do you know? Baylor getting another five-star guard. Igor Demin, the BYU guard, formerly of overseas fame. And then Mustafa Chim, UCF big man, a four-star player. I'm going to start with Quaintance here. We talked about him a bunch this offseason, so if you've been hanging around One and Done, you've probably heard us chatting about him. Super young and has to play 2 seasons in college before even thinking about the NBA. That's how young he is. The buzz, it's mostly around his size and athleticism, regardless of age. You just see it there, and it's just like you look at him and he's like, that's a ball player. He's an athlete. And even the best athletes have an adjustment period, right, guys? Like, it's going to take him a dozen games or so to get fully adjusted to the speed, to the size, to the energy, to the strength of this game. But I could see Hurley unleashing him once he even gets like the tiniest hint of it, what it is and what it means to play big time college basketball. And he's a player that I will be following very closely.
Yeah, absolutely. Another player that we're going to be following very closely is VJ Edgecombe coming into this Baylor program. I mean, look, behind Flag, behind a lot of the Duke incoming freshmen, if we're being honest, and the Rutgers duo. Edgecombe at least enters this season as probably the NBA prospect with the highest ceiling overall, right? He's absolutely tore it up over the course of the summer, high level skill offensively, and goes to a Baylor system that has churned out some big time NBA guards, right? So looking forward to, what might be his only year in the collegiate game, but one that we will absolutely enjoy every minute of as he suits up for the Bears. Mike, we talked earlier about this new look BYU program. Yeah. They bring in a pretty appealing freshman to kick things off of this new era.
Yeah, this kid, man, like what a get for BYU. A lot, a lot going on with that program this offseason. But Igor Demin, 6'9", creative guard that can shoot. I've seen the videos of him. Man, like obviously a lot of hype from the NBA, top 10, top 15 type pick potentially. And, Kevin Young coming over from the Phoenix Suns organization, working with Durant, Beal, not he's used to talent, right? So I think he's going to be able to bring out the best in his game. And, BYU took some L's, but, this guy might make it all worth it. And then, obviously Mustafa Chim. So he was a 5-star in the 25 class, but he reclassifies. He's 7'1", and now he's in the 24. Becomes the composite, the 24/7, drops him down to a 4-star. But really coming into college a year early, and like Quaintance, probably going to take him a little bit to get going here. Obviously, there's rim protection when you're 7'1". That's going to be something that carries over. But his offensive game probably going to take a little bit of time. If he's able to be an impact player, like that's going to be a huge boost for UCF's upside in this tough league. And, with all these, Jay mentioned it, there's so many fifth-year players and so many really good players. Obviously, this wouldn't be the number one conference, in the country without a ton of talent. So we'll see if Chim can get it going. There's a lot of guys that we're going to talk about in this UCF squad where they might be one of the more interesting teams as far as where they could land in the Big 12 when it's all said and done.
Definitely, and we'll see if Chim plays a part in that along with these other freshmen on their respective teams, Demon, Edgecombe, and Acquaintance. Good stuff there, Mike and Eric. Good stuff from the Green Screens Media universe for hanging out with us. We see you in the lobby. We see you hanging out there on Twitter. Big numbers, as always, over there on Elon's Hellhole. We appreciate that. But make sure you get over to YouTube. Green Screens Media. Type it into the old search bar. Find us. What are we at? 1,162, 63, something like that.
Right around there.
We're hanging around there. Let's get to 1,165 by the end of the show. How about it? If you haven't hit those buttons yet, do so. And if you're watching, nobody's doing what we're doing. There's people that you're seeing college basketball content, but when we're breaking all of these, every single league down except the Ivy League. You can go back and watch every single conference breakdown, every single one. But that's not it. The DFS stuff, the DFS content, we are going to start off on fire, and we are going to stay that way all season long. You're not going to want to miss it, but that's not saying we're not going to cover the game in general as well. We got our recap shows that we're going to do. We've got our DFS shows, working on some other projects here and there to bring you all the information that we can all season long. So hit all the buttons, follow us everywhere. We're so close, y'all. We're so close.
Home stretch.
So make sure you're never too far from your broskies in basketball for sure. It's time for the tiers section, brought to you by One and Done. I can say brought to you by drroto.com. I guess why not? The tiers section, the Big 12 tiers. There's a tear in my beer 'cause I'm crying for you, dear. Oklahoma State fans cried a lot of tears last year, but no, this is the tiers called high, mid, and low. We're going to
last one of the year.
Last one of the year. We're going to slot all 16 teams into these tiers here. Let us know in the comments if you agree with where we slot them. And if I didn't let anybody else talk about Caleb Love, I'm sure as hell not going to let anybody else talk about Arizona, the team that I picked the last 2 seasons on my brackets to win the whole damn thing. And, of course, they let me down both times. But now Arizona in the Big 12 with Coach Tommy Lloyd, who has quickly established himself as one of the elite coaches in the game. I really like what he's got with this roster. Love and Townsend with that nice 1-2 punch, loads of experience like we talked about. Jaden Bradley, KJ Lewis are now starters, bringing more of a threat to both ends of the floor than what they had last year. The question is whether they have a 5-man that's good enough to get them over the hump. Tennessee transfer Toby Awaka is an X factor for them. He averaged 5 and 4 last year for the Vols. Fact is, Arizona is one of the top teams in the country, regardless, and they're going in the high tier. I'm started off with the positivity in the high tier. So guess what? I'm going to pass to Mike, Mr. Negative himself, Mr. Pessimist.
No way. I'm excited.
All right. Well, tell me about all the things I should be excited about then about the Sun Devils of Arizona State.
Well, we're going to be excited to see the Nape C Hustle tiers by the end of the year here when they finish in the low tier. And like a lot of people are getting worked up about the beatdown that Duke put on them in the exhibition game a few nights ago. Top to bottom, it feels like they're improved from where they were last year. I mean, Quaintance, obviously a project. You have guys like BJ Freeman, 21 points per game from Milwaukee. Austin Mason, Missouri State, had averaged nearly 20. Bashir Jihad from Ball State, nearly 20 points per game. So stellar mid-major careers. I just don't know that it's going to quite translate. And it's also the Big 12. So the toughest league out there. Obviously, you got some question marks. There's upside nationally, but when you're in this league, you got to be in the low tier right here. So, Eric, we're going to go over to Baylor. We'll put Arizona State in that low tier. What do you got with the old Baylor Bears?
Mike's Baylor Bears checking in at 11 and 7 in conference play last year. As we already profiled, big-time transfers in Roach and O'Meara heading in. They also did a pretty good job of retaining their own talent. Jaden Nunn and Langston Love are back. Those are two guys that chipped in about 11 points a game for them. And then literally everyone in Waco is excited about VJ Edgecombe. Like we detailed, not a whole lot to be excited about in Waco otherwise. So all of that attention is focused on this Bears program. The good news doesn't stop there, right? Like they also brought in Cal transfer Jalen Celestine. He contributed 9 points, shot 44% from 3-point. They also had Josh Awajwa, a big man, X Factor type, 5 points, 3 rebounds per game. Scott Drew is an elite coach, and there is elite talent on this team. I think Baylor is clearly in the high tier as we truck along to BYU.
Wait, hold on a second. Did Peanut Butter Posse call Baylor dry toast basketball earlier? Is that what we were talking about?
We call it National Championship Toast Basketball.
Dry toast basketball. Put a little jam on that thing for me, because I would have taken Baylor's success over
exactly.
my beloved Longhorns. Anyway, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there, Eric. You were going to get Mike, I think, to talk about
get in there, Mike.
the old BYU Cougs.
Yeah, so just got done talking about them, and they were 10-8 last year. Obviously, a great season by Pope. Competitive roster that's been built, and much of it has to do with the retained Trevin Nell, 10.5 points. Fusini Triore, 11 points per game for the big man. Dallin Hall's back, 9 points, 5 assists, and a few others. This team has the ability to kind of be on that high tier line if everything clicks and it's able to all fit together. But just because it's the Big 12, man, we have to put BYU here in the mid. And another team that profiles similarly is Cincinnati, who we're going to put in the mid. 7-11 last year, but right on the cusp of potentially being an elite tier team in this conference. Pound for pound, this roster is loaded. Like, we profiled Skillings, but he might not even be the best player. You have Day Thomas, really good guard there. Seamus Lacoste has been around for a while. Jizzle James, all name, and a really good game. He's back. Bradley transfer Connor Hickman can light it up from 3, 40% from 3 in the Missouri Valley. Aziz Bondego, the big man, is back. Thought he'd play a little bit better last year. But, obviously going from the Utah Valley into the Big 12, pretty tough transition. I think he's going to take a significant jump this year. And then Dylan Mitchell, someone that we're very familiar with. I mean, those two together, they're going to be blocking shots like crazy. Super athletic, 2 of the best shot blockers in the country on the same team. We'll see if Dylan Mitchell will shoot a couple of threes this year.
You're going to shoot the D-ball?
Yeah, we'll see. So I'm going to struggle to not put them in the high tier. But, not everyone in this conference, guys, is going to finish in the top 4. So we're going to have to put Cincinnati right there in the mid-tier.
Yeah, that's a team. That's a tough out for anybody on any night. I can't say the same for Colorado, though. This is a little bit easier decision, I think, for us to make. They lost a lot. Sampson, Lampkin, Hadley, all out the door. But this team lacks ceiling. Most of it's pretty young. It's just – you want to find some positive things. So let's talk Hassan Diop, RJ Smith. There's some upside there that I think the Buffs can, if they get the upside. If talk about a ceiling, if you get the ceiling of Diop and Smith, then maybe you can win a few more games, win 7, maybe 8 games. It's going to be tough, though. It's hard to see them even winning 5 or 6, I feel like, in this conference. So put them in the low tier. Which is the opposite of where we're going to slot Houston. Coach Sampson has built an absolute monster, and this year is no different. 4 of the 5 starters returning, including the aforementioned Roberts and Cryer, wing Emmanuel Sharp. He averaged 12.5 last year, Mike. Are we talking like 15? Is he a guy that can legitimately score 15 points a night?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially 37% from 3. If that doesn't fall off, it's very possible. Oklahoma guard Milos Uzan is going to try and replace some of the production that was left by the Jamal Shed absence now, with him leaving out. The defense is elite. We already know that. This is, Coach Sampson is the coach after all. An absolute contender for the Final Four, no matter what. I don't care what you argue with your mama. Put them in the high tier and pencil Houston into your Final Four in your bracket right now. Eric, what do you got about Iowa State? A team, 13-5 in the conference last year, and definitely a someone that pushed Houston, obviously, in the Big 12 tournament as well. But what say you about the Cyclones?
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're gonna project Houston to be the number one defense in the country, Iowa State is probably number two, right? Or maybe it's even like a 1-1A kind of situation. A lot of that has to do with their absolutely devastating backcourt that's returning. We talked about Gilbert and Lipsy earlier, but you also can't forget their guards, right? Curtis Jones gave them 11 points and shot right at the Heinrich line last year. He is back. And I kind of like what they did in the portal, right? They went over to Northern Iowa and nabbed guard Nathan Heisey and St. Mary's forward Josh Jefferson. So definitely have some nice pieces that we think can put them over the edge. Coach Otzelberger, just an absolutely elite coach in this league. I mean, legitimate Final Four upside. So I will slot them into the high tier. And I think we might have a team in Kansas that could be following them right along. Mike, what do we need to know about the Jayhawks?
Well, they're the AP number one team to start the year and profiled a ton of their players. Got Dickinson, Harris. We didn't talk about KJ Adams, but he's back. Bringing in Storer Griffin. And we didn't talk about Zeke Mayo, the Summit League Player of the Year. Shaquille Moore comes over from the SEC, averaged 8 points, shot 36% at Mississippi State. And then Northern Illinois guard David Coit averaged 20 points per game. He's going to bring depth. So elite coaching, that's kind of a trend in this conference, and another Final Four contender. So yes, Kansas there in the old high tier, Jay. The rival there, Kansas State. What do you think?
A bit of a step back last year for Coach Jerome Tang and the Wildcats, but of course reloaded with Hawkins and others in the portal. Achor coming over from Samford, where he averaged 16 and 6. And then Dougie McDaniel coming over from the Wolverines, where he averaged 16 points and 4.5 at times. A great get for Coach Tang there. And let's not forget about Max Jones coming over from Cal State Fullerton. He averaged 15 and shot 39% from beyond the arc. So this is not a rebuild, it's a reload, even though it's tough because Kansas State, obviously 8-10 last year. Yeah, expect a little bit more maybe out of a Jerome Tang coach team, and Kansas State on a nightly basis is another one of those teams that's just a tough out. I do think they get back to around 10 wins, just too talented not to, but anywhere past that, it's another thing where it's like, how many teams can we put at the top? We've talked about 9
you got a bunch
so
of them
far,
up there
and
already.
5 of them are already in the high tier. I love Kansas State. I love Jerome Tang, but we're going to put them in the mid tier for now. Oklahoma State, Eric, I talked about their fans tiers earlier, leading into the segments. Will they be another team this year? Or I should say, will they be a team filling those tiers again this year down in the low?
Yeah, well, low was definitely where they sat last year, 4-14 in conference play, and this is another team with a ton of transfers, right? They do have their guard Bryce Thompson returning. He gave them about 11.5 points last year. Looked good this offseason. A lot of interesting portal pieces, right? Devo Davis is coming in from Arkansas. You've also got Khalil Brantley coming in from LaSalle. That's definitely a nice addition to their backcourt. They also brought in Abu Usman from Xavier. He's a forward that contributed 6.5 points, 6.5 boards. He has some experience playing at the high major level. And beyond that, I actually like some of their younger players, right? They've got a sophomore, Jamarion Keller. He gave them 6.5 points last year. I think it's really two things. There's so much talent in this league, but beyond that, for this Oak State program, so many new guys that have to get accustomed to the system, have to get accustomed to their role, playing together. It feels like the arrow's pointing in the right direction, but I don't think it's going to be a leap. I think it's going to be a bit more of an on-ramp. So I'll put Oak State in the low tier for now.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Makes a lot of sense. That could be a team surprise a few people. Could scratch out a few extra wins. Who knows? A team that scratched out some wins in this conference last year was TCU, 9-9 actually. We talk about elite coaching in this league. Stop me if you heard this before. Another team built around transfers in college basketball. You got elite coaching in the Big 12 and transfers, teams full of transfers. One and the same here all across the country, and TCU is no different. White will be joined by Arizona State guard Frankie Collins and Noah Reynolds, formerly of Green Bay, in a rebuilt backcourt. Ernest Uday showed some promise last year as the big man averaged 4 points and 5 boards in only 17 minutes per game. Again, I mentioned earlier, phenomenal coaching in this league. Jamie Dixon is no exception to that. And I joked earlier about penciling Houston into your Final Four. Pencil TCU into the tournament. It's just it's going to happen.
Pretty much.
And we're in store for another 9 to 10 win season. So just put them in the mid tier, and they keep getting it done. Jamie Dixon's a great coach for sure. We're winding it down here, Mike. Let's head up to Lubbock. Lost Chris Beard to Texas. Trying to figure out, do we have an identity here? Now you've got Coach McCasland entering his second year after, you never want to be the guy that replaces the guy. You want to be the next dude. And that's what Coach McCasland is. Yep. And, 11 wins in this conference in year one. Not too shabby.
Yeah, not too shabby. And gets Darren Williams back, an absolute stud. Kerwin Walton's back, shot 45% from three. Feels like he's been in college forever, started his career at North Carolina. Chance McMillan was a very, very good player last year, 11 points per game, shot nearly 40% from three. A kid that Coach mentioned this offseason was Kevin Overton as being one of the surprises, 11 points per game coming over from the Drake program, 35% from the three. And then you put JT Top in there, who obviously tore up the Mountain West. There's a table setter coming over, Elijah Hawkins. He averaged 7.5, one of the best assists per game players in college last year, one of the highest assist rates. Elijah Hawkins comes in from Minnesota. So this team looks absolutely sharp. Once again, like any other league, this would probably be the high tier, but we're right there on the cusp of it, and we're just gonna have to drop them there in the mid tier for Texas Tech. So we'll slide them in the mid tier, and then UCF here 7-11 last year. This is going to be either a team that's going to be really good or this thing could blow up quickly. Coach Dawkins there obviously has his leader in Darius Johnson. He's got his running mate back as Jalen Sellers, averaged 16 points per game. You got some highly touted transfers, but a lot of them have question marks regarding off-the-court stuff and even on-the-court stuff. George Mason wing Keyshawn Hall kind of had some stories out there about him during the year last year, 6.5 points, 8 boards. He was a stud in the A-10. Dior Johnson, JUCO kid who was a former 5-star player out of high school a few years ago. Mikey Williams, who had the whole, dealing with off-court incidents and stuff and court and things like that. He comes over from Memphis, stuff. I don't want to hearsay, but, they've obviously had issues and they have 5-star talent. So we're taking a shot here. If you hit one and you hit bingo, it could be a pretty good year. Also, Chim, a young kid, right? You talked about him. So I think the range of outcomes of this team is one of the wildest across the entire country.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to put them in the mid tier. There's no way. And they're a candidate for the low tier as well and can see the bottom fall out pretty quickly, actually.
Makes a lot of sense. Eric, what about Utah? Anything to get excited about there?
Not really. They're moving into the Big 12, and moving can be a little fun and exciting. But beyond that, I don't know what there is to be excited around this program. They had some huge losses, right? Davion Smith is out the door. Braden Carlson's out the door. Gabe Madsen is back. He gave him 13.5 points last year, but ultimately the firepower on both ends is just kind of lackluster, right? So they'll need someone like Miro Little coming in from Baylor to break out. Maybe. I mean, it feels like on the whole, the rest of the pieces are kind of capped in their upside. So I'll put Utah in the low tier as their welcome to the new conference.
All right, so with that being said here, as I can, a little bit of foreshadowing, West Virginia will not be in the low tier. So Peanut Butter Posse is in the live chat asking right now, which team from the lower tiers do you think has the best chance to surprise? West Virginia will end up being in the mid tier. We can just go ahead and say that now. But is there any team that could jump up? Could you see a team, Mike, like a UCF? Obviously, you talked about the range of outcomes being extremely wide. Is UCF a team that, if they hit their ceiling, could jump up and have the biggest chance to really surprise? Is it a team in the lower tiers that maybe can take a jump up to the mid? Which team stands out to you, Mike?
Yeah, I would say from the mid, BYU and Cincinnati have high tier ability. So those two teams, I think, have the best chance to go up to the high tier. From the low tier, it's probably a tie between Oklahoma State and Arizona State, just because when you look at the roster, for Arizona State, there's a lot of guys that have done it, but not at this level. And we're gonna have to see how they play as the season progresses. And for Oklahoma State, like Coach Ludd's done a lot of winning at Western Kentucky, and they have talent there. I could see them sneaking out 9. Everything clicks with them. I could see them sneaking out 9. I got issues with Colorado and Utah. You got to have some dogs, and Arizona State and Oklahoma State at least have a couple of guys that they can probably rely on a night-to-night basis. So yeah, those would probably be the moves. It's just tough to see any of the 5 of the top, barring like crazy injuries. Those 5 are in line for up to 2. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if all of them were in line for a 1 seed at some point during the season. You know what I mean? Like, it's just that's how good the top of this thing is going to be.
No doubt about it. And I'm going to come, Mike, I'm going to come back to you here for country roads, take me home to the place I belong. West Virginia, mountain mama, take me home. Country roads. We're going to get it in tonight, baby. It's West Virginia, 14-4 in the conference last season, but a little bit of an overhaul here with talent and coaching. What to think about the Mountaineers, Mike?
Yeah, so 4-14 last year. Definitely an overhaul here. Javon Small comes in from Oklahoma State, 15 points, 4 assists. Like, showed he could be a problem in the league. I think this team obviously we're going to stick them in the mid. I think it's because this Illinois tandem that we really didn't get to see much of. Sincere Harris, Amani Hansberry, they look pretty good. So they're just going to need some opportunity. And you have an X factor like Toby Okani from UIC. He's averaged 11 points per game, a really good defensive player on the wing. So I think they're going to be able to get some stops when they need to. I think DeVries obviously is not going to have a problem transitioning over. So, yeah, I think they're going to do enough here. So we'll slot West Virginia in as our final team of all 30 of the 31 conferences that we previewed this offseason.
Love
Ivy
it.
League stuffed in a locker somewhere.
Yeah, that's all right. That's okay. Ivy League mamas don't even talk about their teams. That's okay, though. But right here in the Big 12, low tier, Arizona State, Colorado, Oklahoma State, and Utah. They'll do mid-tier, BYU, Cincinnati, Kansas State, TCU, Texas Tech, UCF, and West Virginia. The high tier, which we got out of the way really early in this segment, Arizona, Baylor, Houston, Iowa State, and Kansas. No slouch in that group at all. Not a lot of slouches in this conference to begin with. A jam-packed conference of talent, coaching, players, and the whole bit. Congratulations, Mike and Eric. We have accomplished it. We have completed all of the conferences now. And we hope that you, the Green Screens Media Universe, has followed us through this entire journey. If not, go back and watch them all. And make sure you follow us on Elon's Hellhole on Instagram and on TikTok at One and Done CBB. Make sure you follow at Fantasy Nav. That guy, Eric, the blue over there, pushing the buttons, doing the graphics, doing his thing. Our guy, Mike, El Capitan himself, the OG Money Mike. You'll know in those DFS streets real soon why we call him the OG Money Mike. Don't forget about our guy, Nape, either Napesy Hustle, at The Real Napier in those Twitter streets. I am the conductor of this whole thing at Dr. William Cannon on Twitter. Hit the notification bells. We are doing everything that you could possibly want from a college basketball program all season long. Tell somebody you love them. Take care of yourself. I'm the JAYHEINRICH. Come again, baby. Peace.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drroto.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.